Hello. John Wesley Bready, This Freedom Whence, England Before and After Wesley. Page 289. This is a discussion of George Williams and the birth of the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association. Next among the memorable organizations that grew out of the evangelical revival was the YMCA, founded by George Williams in 1844. Williams' parentage was as obscure as Nasmyth's. That's David Nasmyth, who had founded the RSPCA. Following a schooling little above average, he was apprenticed when 14 to Mr. Holmes, a draper in Bridgewater. Holmes, being a regular attendant at the Congregational Chapel, insisted that his apprentices attend service there on Sunday mornings. This at first, to Williams, was irksome, but the personality of the minister, Reverend James, grew upon him, and he began attending evening service also. When 16, on a winter's Sunday evening in 1837, Williams experienced his soul's awakening. Alone in the back seat of the chapel, his being was pierced to the quick by the minister's sermon. Christ, he knew, was pleading for the lordship of his life. That night he knelt in fervent prayer at the back of the shop and arose a new creature. Henceforth, the one-time careless, thoughtless, godless, swearing young fellow was a staunch disciple of Christ. Just after Williams' conversion, he read 2 books by that powerful American evangelist, Charles Finney, lectures to professing Christians and lectures on revivals. These books fanned his newfound spiritual life into a consuming fire and made him a ceaseless missioner among his associates. Before his apprenticeship was over, he had the joy of seeing the atmosphere of the Holmes Drapery completely changed. Every one of his business associates in that Bridgewater shop he had led into a personal Christian experience and into active discipleship. Such was the youth who, when 20, procured a post at £40 a year with the Metropolitan Drapery House of Hitchcock. When Williams came to London in 1841, the working conditions of drapers' assistants were peculiarly bad. Already, Shaftesbury's epic campaign had begun to restrict the hours and improve the conditions of factory operatives. But so far, black-coated workers behind counter and desk had found no relief, and the short-term committees were not yet. By common consent, drapers' assistants were the worst slavies of all white-collared toilers in London. Competition in their ranks was keen. Daily hours of labor ranged from 12 to 15. By ancient custom, they lived and slept over their master's place of business, none having a bed to himself. In these circumstances, it was difficult to nurture spiritual life, though profanity and smut found fertile soil. Among the 140 assistants in the Hitchcock firm, Williams, on arrival, found but one professing Christian. These 2, becoming friends, began a campaign of prayer and personal evangelism, inviting their associates, one by one, to come and hear their favorite preachers and attend a Bible class of which they were members. It was all surprisingly ingenuous, and they, at first, were the recipients of many a rebuff. But soon a prayer and Bible study group was meeting daily in one of the bedrooms over the Hitchcock establishment. Finney's books were introduced to this nucleus. Conversions followed, and at the end of the year, about a dozen of the assistants were utterly committed to the service of Christ. Before the end of the second year, temperance, mutual improvement, and missionary meetings, besides those for prayer and Bible study, were part of the program. Even the head of the firm now was one of the converts. The enthusiasts were transforming the whole aspect of a great business house, while it, in consequence, was contributing workers to Sunday schools, missions, temperance guilds, and churches throughout London. George Williams' 3rd year in London marks the origin of the Young Men's Christian Association. The moral and spiritual influences started in Hitchcock's spread to the West End Drapery House of W.D. Owen, where the principal assistant, James Smith, supported by Mr. Branch, a London city missionary, began similar efforts. Williams successfully cooperated with them. Then the thought began to possess him. Why not a comprehensive association of Christian young men to mediate spiritual and moral influences in all drapery houses, indeed in all business firms, of London. The zealot prayed and pondered. He discussed the project with his most intimate helpers. And finally, on June 6th, 1844, an inner circle of 12 young men assembled in William's bedroom and formed themselves into an association pledged to this high purpose. Thus, in an upper room over a great business firm, inspired by the faith and vision of a stripling from the country, was born the YMCA. At that historic meeting, however, the name had not yet been determined, the immediate designation being the Drapers' Evangelical Association. It was in a later consultation that the now famous name was agreed upon. Then a carefully worded circular letter was sent to the leading business houses of London, and this evoked many encouraging replies. The mission spread. New zealots were forthcoming. Lord Shaftesbury, whom Sir George Williams was later wont to style our Moses, was procured as president. And so from that upper room, where 12 young clerks, aflame with missionary fire, bound themselves into a committee for definite Christian advance, evolved a movement which, spreading to every continent, has affected millions of young men for good. Next time, the march continues. More works generated by the evangelical revival. I'll put in a link to a discussion Vivian did based on Victor Shepard's book. So great a cloud of witnesses, I think it's called, based on Hebrews 12. Is it Hebrews 12? Yeah, Hebrews 12. Victor Shepard on Lord Shaftesbury and his great work in Victorian England and how it changed the world. See you soon.